This is USVI News, your Virgin Islands connection.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for USVI News. I'm Emily Matson. Hurricane Fiona remains a powerful Category 4 storm as it heads west of Bermuda. Meanwhile, more than 1 million people in Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic are still without power after the storm hit the islands. Morgan Chesky has the latest now from Bermuda.
Yeah, here in Bermuda, you can certainly feel a calm before the storm, but that said, the wind starting to pick up and rain is expected ahead of Hurricane Fiona's arrival later tonight or early Friday morning. And this is a serious hurricane. Right now, it's forecast as a Category 4 when it is expected to sideswipe Bermuda 600 miles off the coast of the Carolinas. It's expected to be a Category 3 hurricane, but that is still packing powerful winds and drenching rains that could knock out power here, that could flood low-lying areas. And that's why residents we've spoken to are doing as much as they can ahead of this storm. They do say they're well prepared and they are no stranger to hurricanes. Back in 2014, this small island nation was struck not once but twice when Hurricane Faye and Gonzalo struck just 7 days apart. Now, in the meantime, as this hurricane churns its way through the Atlantic here, there are also warnings as far north as Canada where they could see historic flooding from this massive hurricane that, as of right now, has everyone here in Bermuda on high alert.
And recovery efforts are underway in the Turks and Caicos Islands. Fiona slammed the Caribbean islands with winds up to 125 miles an hour. Authorities in the TCI on Wednesday evening were thankful that no lives were lost on the islands during the hurricane, though there were reports of damage at Grand Turk Airport and other locations. We'll have much more on how Fiona impacted the Turks and Caicos coming up tomorrow here on USVI News. And the storm also forced more than 12,000 people from their homes in the Dominican Republic due to flooding. And in Puerto Rico, more than 1 million people again are still without power after Monday's landfall. Our lead national correspondent, David Begnaud, takes us there.
We set out from San Juan to Lajas. That's a town on the southwestern side of Puerto Rico, right near where Hurricane Fiona made landfall. How long have you lived here?
25 years.
In the hills above Lajas, we met Olga Vega, right outside her home. She and her daughter rode out the storm in the bathroom. Part of her tin roof was ripped off, but her problems don't end with the hurricane.
It's very dangerous here. This was because of the tremors.
Oh, because of the earthquake.
Yes.
She reminded us that this area has been dealing with small earthquakes for the last 2 years. How are you doing emotionally?
I am beginning to feel weak. I have nothing. I don't have clean clothes and everything is out of place.
No water, no power, no roof.
No water, no power.
And she is not alone. The vast majority of Puerto Ricans are still without power. Roughly half don't have water. Is there any more flooding in Lajas?
No.
It was the mayor of Lajas, Jason Martinez, who took us around saying people weren't waiting on the government to show up. They were helping each other clean up quickly. Martinez is a former electric lineman who helped to restore power after Hurricane Maria 5 years ago. He made this prediction now.
Maybe 2 months to be ready to get light again.
Oh, you think it'll take 2 months?
2 months, yeah.
Wow, okay.
Right now.
From Lajas, we flew east over the municipality of Jauco and saw part of what one expert called the worst hit to Puerto Rico's agriculture industry in 20 years. Fields of plantains, bananas, dairy products, all underwater and ruined. Then we landed in Salinas, where Puerto Rico's Governor Pedro Pierluisi had just arrived.
My assessment is that there's a substantial majority of the customers will get their power back by the end of the day tomorrow.
Really?
Yeah.
Look, that is a bold but promising prediction, especially for an island that 5 years ago after Hurricane Maria was without power for months, some people for a year. For the governor to say that, and by the way, when he says tomorrow, he means today, that could be a big deal. If it doesn't happen, you better believe that people will hold him accountable. David Begnaud, CBS News, Puerto Rico.
And our thoughts definitely with our neighboring territory of Puerto Rico and in the Dominican Republic. In the midst of destroyed crops and damaged homes, Dominicans in El Ceibo, east of the island, are trying to get back on their feet after the devastation of Fiona. They're literally picking up the pieces of their homes and belongings. Banana, coffee, and cocoa crops were all destroyed. One agricultural producer said he's worried because a lot of people depend on farming here, and some of the producers who lost their crops had taken out loans in order to grow them. Fiona is the first hurricane to score a direct hit on the Dominican Republic since Jeanne left severe damage back in September of 2004. Fiona caused severe floods, cutting off villages, forcing about 12,500 people from their homes and leaving more than 700,000 people without power. Virgin Islands Senator Carla Joseph secures funding for the 175th anniversary of the Virgin Islands Emancipation Commemoration. Senator Joseph's bill passed, which will appropriate $1 million from the Community Trust Fund of the Virgin Islands Historical Commemorative Fund to erect historical monuments and to fund preparations for the 175th anniversary celebration of the emancipation of the Virgin Islands. This is a video of past emancipation celebrations, but next year's will be epic. In a statement, Joseph said, quote, "The emancipation of the enslaved people living in the Virgin Islands in 1848 is a monumental triumph of our ancestors who liberated themselves to give us the opportunities and freedoms we enjoy today. The production and placements of monuments in our towns across the territory and the upcoming celebrations will be a lesson in history for our young people to identify and embrace the story of our journey to liberation." End quote. More than 12,000 Virgin Islands students qualify for President Biden's student loan relief plan. Last month, as we reported, President Biden announced his administration's plan to give some Americans more breathing room by providing up to $20,000 in debt relief to Pell Grant recipients and up to $10,000 to other borrowers. According to the Biden administration, 7,800 USVI student loan borrowers are eligible for debt relief from student loans, and 4,700 Pell borrowers in the territory are eligible for Pell Grant debt relief. Certainly great news. In the coming weeks, the Department of Education will release additional details on how individuals across the country and in the USVI can benefit from the administration's student debt relief plan. Governor Albert Bryan Jr. sharing the good news this week, saying, quote, "President Biden is to be commended for his courage and determination to ensure that our students can attain the higher education they strive for." He went on to say the president's action will help our former students burdened by the high cost of college recover more quickly so they can become the backbone of the bright future that lies ahead for the U.S. Virgin Islands. Big financial news this week. The Federal Reserve once again raised interest rates, meaning you will soon pay more on major purchases. Wednesday's hike was another 0.75 percentage point, making the rates the highest they've been since 2008. It's all in an effort to slow inflation, which is at a nearly 40-year high, devastating budgets across the nation. But economists say raising rates to curb inflation is a tightrope walk. Too little, and inflation remains high. Too much, and a recession begins, leaving people out of work. Dr. Ken Louie says we are living in a complicated economy right now, and only time will tell what the rate hikes will mean.
We still have the lingering effects of the pandemic, along with the associated supply chain disruptions. We have the war in Ukraine, and we have people who for a couple of years stayed out of the labor force but are now looking to enter.
Dr. Louie says if you have an upcoming major purchase like a car or house, it's likely wise to make it soon before the rate hike takes effect. Likewise, pay down credit card debt where higher interest rates mean higher monthly payments. And it's getting more expensive to own and care for pets. New data suggests inflation and the slowing economy are making an impact on pet owners' wallets. So, is the big splurging on pets we saw during the pandemic over? Our USVI News' Kristen Allen has a look at why both retailers and Wall Street are concerned about a shift in pet spending.
Spoiled pets are feeling the inflation pinch. New data indicates pet owners might be splurging less on their furry companions. Wall Street, retail stores, and pet shelters are all showing signs that the slowing economy is impacting spending habits for dog and cat owners.
Prices have skyrocketed. People can't even pay for their own groceries, so let alone care for their pets.
Shares of online retailer Chewy are down more than 35% this year, the drop leading some investors to wonder whether surging inflation could impact sales and earnings. Meanwhile, retail giants Walmart and Target reporting consumers are now spending mostly on essentials. And this trend could extend to pet owners who may focus more on things like food and less on discretionary items like toys.
There's inflation and the cost to care for animals. There's a fear about supply chain.
According to the National Retail Federation, the pandemic gave pet supply retailers a boost, as many pet owners were stuck at home and spent more money on their four-legged family members. But now there's growing evidence the pandemic era of splurging on pets could be over. Pet shelters like this one in Georgia are reporting a growing number of pet surrenders.
Thank you.
But also a surge in owners needing help with basics for their pets like food and veterinary care.
Paws Atlanta has a pet food bank where anyone from the community can come to get free pet food for their dog or cat.
Kristen Allen, USVI News.
And as we've been reporting, the St. Thomas Humane Society has been seeing an increase in pet surrenders as well. So if you're able to help by fostering a pet or adopting a pet, you're encouraged to do so.